Hello everybody and welcome to Niagara Reds TV and the match preview for the Toronto FC versus Portland Timbers game kicking off at BMO Field on Saturday, April 27th at 3 p.m. Now, Giovanni Savaresi's men come into this game hot off their first win of the season against Columbus last weekend. They now sit at 1-5-1, 11th place in the West on 4 points. They really hit rock bottom April 6th, a few weeks ago when they lost 3-0 to San Jose. Rebounded a little bit with a good performance against Dallas, even though they lost. And then obviously that big win last weekend against a decent Columbus side. I think they're a good side. I think they're just off to a slow start this season. I think since 2015, if you look at their point totals, they have started really slow. And that's just down to some defensive issues, which we'll get into in a minute. As far as how Savaresi likes to set up his team, last year after he replaced Caleb Porter, he used a variety of formations, eventually sort of bookending those formations with a 4-2-3-1, which is what they carried through their run in the playoffs. This season, he started again with that familiar 4-2-3-1, and then those defensive issues led to him changing to a 5-3-2, where he played five defenders. And then last weekend against Columbus, he actually went to a 4-4-2 for the first time this season. So also within those formation changes, there was different players that came into the side. I think if you look at their team sheets so far this season, there hasn't really been a lot of continuity in terms of, there's always been changes to the teams that he's put out there. Some of that is due to injuries, but it seems like it's still a team that's a work in progress, and that he's still trying to figure out, first of all, who his best first 11 is, as well as what formation best suits his side. The defensive issues that Portland's having this season stems from what they did in the close season, where they got rid of 3 of their defensive players, and three players that had been a major part of their defense last year in platooning those 3 players and partnering them with who is really the stability of their back four last season, Loris Mabiala. And so Elvis Powell left, and as well as Liam Ridgewell. And Lawrence Olam also left, and then also in the midst of that, there was a keeper change. So longtime keeper Jake Gleason, who had been with them since the USL days, he lost the number 1 spot to Jeff Attanella. So there was a goalkeeping change. They were sort of trying to bring in Tuiloma to partner Mabiala in the middle. They got off to a kind of a slow start last season in terms of not getting results, and Ridgewell had to come in and partner Mabiala after the first 2 games, I believe, for the next 4 games, where they were able to take 4 victories and keep 3 clean sheets. And it was really after that Tuiloma experiment didn't work at the start of last season. There was really those 3 defenders that were platooning through with Mabiala. So losing those 3, I think, was a big, loss for them. And although those defenders are certainly replaceable, I think that has gone a long way in not allowing this defense to settle, especially when you take into account that, like I said earlier, with the keeper change that took place last season, having those veteran defenders come in and help settle the new keeper too. So still trying to sort out their back line. It's improved the last 2 games. They've made some other adjustments that have helped out the center backs, which we'll talk about in just a moment, but just some subtle adjustments that have helped out the back four. The the last couple games, and hopefully, if you're a Portland fan, hopefully that continues, but hopefully it continues after this next weekend, this weekend's game. So with those departures that I spoke about, obviously defense was a need for Portland, and they went out and brought in Jorge Morera on loan at right back, and then they also brought in a center back from New England, who was a designated player there, Claude Dialna, who to try to integrate him in the back with Mabiala. Hasn't worked out quite yet, and so really, what Portland seems to be doing now is trying to reignite that relationship between Mabiala and Tuiloma. As far as attacking threats for Portland, obviously Diego Valeri, obviously we know, is their main man, through they try to set up their attack through. They last year they had a couple striker forward changes and ultimately settled on Jeremy Abobase, and so Abobase actually got on the score sheet last weekend against Columbus. They tried to bring in, or they were looking at bringing in, a DP forward for this season, but there was nothing doing there, and they seem to be a bit thin up front at the moment. So how do I think Portland will line up against TFC? It's a bit of a tricky one just because of how many different formation changes they've had this season, and the fact that they really haven't settled on a first 11. Initially, I was thinking maybe they keep the same team and go 4-4-2, like they rolled out against Columbus last weekend. But ultimately, I think what Portland is probably going to resort back to is their favored 4-2-3-1. And the reason why I say this is because TFC, now in back-to-back weeks, Seattle and Minnesota, they've both played a 4-2-3-1. And they've scored 6 goals. TFC has conceded in those 2 games 6 goals. So the blueprint has kind of been, the last couple of weeks, the blueprint has been laid on how to get at TFC. And with the 4-2-3-1 formation the last couple of weeks, what that's allowed Seattle and Minnesota to do is to get their fullbacks higher up the pitch and get their fullbacks involved in the play. And we saw that with Victor Rodriguez and Brad Smith for Seattle, and the joy that Seattle was able to get down that flank. And then we also saw it with Ethan Finley and Romain Médanier for Minnesota, and all those players contributed in goals for their clubs out wide against TFC. So, I just think that Portland now has seen this, and I think that even with their defensive issues and that formation that they had, and we'll talk a little bit about why they may have a little more confidence in playing it and not conceding, is the blueprint's been laid, and they've seen how to beat TFC and what kind of formation, if they turn up in that formation and can defend somewhat decently, that they've got a chance to really get at TFC. And listen, those wide areas, and this is what it comes back to, is those wide areas are a concern for us because, again, we don't have a real wide threat, and the fullbacks got involved last week for Portland against Columbus, and it was Morera down that right hand side who was getting forward and put in some dangerous balls into the box. Columbus tried to hit them on the counter, But one of the reasons why I think Portland might feel a little bit better about playing this formation is the last couple of games against Dallas and against Columbus. I watched those games, and the midfield is doing a better job of getting back in support when the right back gets forward. And that's helping out the center back, Mabiala, who is previously wasn't getting that support from the midfielders. So I think that's one area where Portland's improved. And that has just allowed the right back, Moreira, to really get forward and create havoc down that wing. And Columbus, again, they just didn't have the wide area in the wing play to really hurt Portland when that happened. When you have that wide area in the wing play and we keep harping on it, it just means that the fullback is going to have to be more conscious and maybe pick their spots more as to where they get forward. And it's going to limit the damage, obviously, if they do then, if that's happening. And if they do bomb forward and you have that attacking wide player, then you can get in behind them really quickly. And if you have those wing players that are pacey and are very skillful, they can get in behind and do damage before the midfield is able to get back and help out the right back. And if the center back gets drawn out to that wide player, then it's just going to create more open space for our danger players like Pozuelo to run into, like we saw last week for the 2 goals and the chances that he got, the goal that he got off Morrow, and then the chance that he got off De Leon. So it's an area of concern for us. I think that other teams are going to exploit it, and there's a lot of teams in MLS that play the 4-2-3-1, and if you've got wing or fullbacks that can get forward and overlap and create problems, then I think that's an area that TFC is going to struggle. And when we play those teams, until we address the center back issue to deal with those dangerous balls that come in, and the winger to keep that fullback honest, and also to help track back quickly and help out on that in those wide areas. So I thought Moreira linked up pretty well again. Just getting back to that Columbus game, Flores and Moreira linked up well, and I thought that those two are really starting to form a bit of a partnership. Villafena, he's the left back, Jorge Villafena, obviously U.S. international. And we know that he likes to get forward on the left, and he'll want to get forward, and he can do it. We've seen it for the U.S. men's national team. And so it's a double area of concern, I think, this week. I suspect Villafena will come back into the side. You'll see my team in just a moment for how I think Portland will set up. So I think he'll come back into the side as part of that back four, and I think he's going to cause us problems down the left-hand side as well. So I'll put up the team now. This is the team that I think Portland will turn out in the formation. So as you can see, Villafena, Tuiloma, Mabiala, and Moreira across the back, and then Diego Chara and Christian Paradis have formed a pretty good partnership, the two of them. I was debating whether or not Guzman would come into the team for Portland, but I think that Chara and Paradis the last couple of games have formed a decent partnership, and those are the two that I've been talking about that have been helping to get back and support Mabiala when the opposition has tried to get in behind the marauding fullback, Moreira, who's got forward. It's Paradis and Chara who did a good job against Columbus in getting back, just to support Mabiala until Moreira recovered. And then the midfield three of Blanco, Valeri, and Flores. And then up top, obviously, with Jeremy Ebobisse. Tuiloma and Mabiala are starting to form a really good understanding. or at least a better understanding in the last 2 games. They've only conceded 2 goals. They've looked a lot stronger. Certainly, I know Columbus isn't exactly an attacking threat, but I thought that they looked pretty strong in that Columbus game, and I didn't think they looked too bad against Dallas. So they're starting to form a little bit of a partnership, which just ties into why I think Portland have a little more confidence maybe to play this system. That maybe they can get a better performance from those two in this system now, and I think that to be honest, they'll feel confident they can cause TFC problems. And scored 3 goals in a place last week where it was tough to score goals. So they scored goals, 3 goals in Columbus, which is Columbus is pretty good defensively, especially at home, and has a pretty good home record. And it's a tough place to score, and they went there and scored 3 goals. And I think that they'll see what happened last week with Minnesota and TFC and realize that they can cause us problems. And that they'll come here looking to have a go. Like I said, I think this is a good Portland side. I think they're a good team. I think they just got off to a slow start and they're trying to figure some things out. But I think they're going to be dangerous. I think they've got a good side, and I think that, they think that they'll be able to come to Toronto and cause us some problems. I think they'll also know that TFC's missing Altidore, and that we have less of a threat to respond with if we need goals, and we'll talk about that on the TFC side with who I think comes in. But I think that without Altidore, I think they'll feel that they might be a bit more comfortable defensively. Certainly, you would, if you had the pick of TFC's forwards, Altidore isn't the one that you'd want to play against, obviously. So I think that with the confidence growing a little bit defensively, with them making those subtle adjustments, and with Altidore not being in the lineup, that they'll feel like they can maybe defend a little better and then get at us. So on the TFC side, obviously TFC coming into this game with a 4-1-1 record, 3rd place in the East on 13 points, but they've got the 3 games in hand. Montreal and DC haven't played 9 games. TFC obviously haven't played the 6 games. So I'll just put up the TFC team here. I think Drew Moore. Obviously, they said that Vanny has confirmed that he'd be available. So Moore comes in for Simon for me. Oro comes in for Richie Laria. Bono keeps his place. I know last week I called for Westberg, but I just feel like if Vanny wouldn't drop Bono last week after Westberg put in a pretty good performance against Seattle, even though TFC lost, it seems like he's content with sticking it out with Bono and letting him work through his errors. So I don't think that Bono loses his place. And then I go, so across the back, Moro, Mavinga, Moore, Oro. Hopefully having Moore back, it should help TFC in dealing with some of the dangerous balls from delivered wide. Because obviously that's an area that we've struggled in with our center backs, is not only getting exploited in those wide positions, but then our center backs not being able to deal with the aerial threat or with the low driven cross like we saw against Seattle. So the midfield, I have Bradley, Delgado, Osorio, Pizzuelo, and De Leon. We'll talk about who I have up front in a minute, Jordan Hamilton, as you can see, but we're weak in those wide areas, and as we've harped on many times, you guys are probably sick of me saying it, but it's true. We need to get something from Moro, from De Leon, and from Oro. Similar to what we got last week against Minnesota, with Moro getting past Medinier on the left and drawing out the center back and creating the space for Pizzuelo, and playing that square ball to Pizzuelo to smash home, and then De Leon doing the same thing later in the half on the right-hand side, almost resulting in Pizzuelo's hat trick. We need something. We need something from them on the wing. Centrally, Bradley and Delgado in the middle again. Darwin Quintero got free from them a couple times last week. So for the first goal where he sort of ran through, he made that run, lost Bradley and Delgado, and then ran through our two center backs. And then in the second half of the penalty, where he was able to free himself, collect the ball, freed himself from Bradley just at the top of our box, and then was able to pick his head up and play that ball into the feet of Rodriguez. Valeri obviously being the danger man for Portland and wanting to link up with their forward Ebobisse. So I think that we really got Bradley and Delgado are going to be at Johnny on the spot centrally, and really take care of Valeri. I think that. So last weekend, Osorio and I thought they did the midfield did a fairly decent job in getting back to help cover in those wide positions. And although Minnesota was able to get joy, you can't. The work rate was there from the midfield, and they're going to have to do the same thing with regards to the overlaps out wide and getting back and helping out in those wide positions. So. I look for DeLeon and Osorio are going to have to, really, they're going to be running this week. Similar to Osorio worked hard on that side last week with Medanier, and he's going to have to do the same thing this week with Moreira, and similar to with DeLeon. The difference last week was Francisco Calvo, the left back for Minnesota, really picked his spots. If they do roll out in this 4-2-3-1 formation, and Villafena is called back into the side and can get forward, that could be those battles. We're going to have to really do a decent job in the wide areas this week, similar to last week in terms of work rate. Up top, obviously, it's a big decision. For me, Vanney had options. He certainly has options. I think that Hamilton, he's obviously, for me, he's ahead of Boyd and Akinola in terms of what he's done this season and his continuing development. He's got 3 goals in, I believe, the 2 league games. I think he's been involved in 2 league games, and he's got the 3 goals. And he's taken his chances today, and he's taken his opportunities, and he's maturing for me. And I think that part of that process, as he proves himself, is to trust him in these situations and give him those opportunities. And this is an opportunity for him. Altidore injured. Hamilton's done well. You need to keep rewarding him, and you need to keep allowing him to take his chances. And I think it's a big opportunity for him to take the lead in the attacking sense and to lead the lone forward. He has the support of a tremendous player like Pozuelo. He's got a lot of veteran players around him, in DeLeon, Osorio, Pozuelo, Bradley, Morrow getting forward. So he's got people in good areas to support him, and he's almost like a like for like with Josie Altidore. Obviously not in terms of skill level necessarily, but in terms of size and Hamilton being able to make the same diagonal runs to drag defenders that Altidore makes when we play the ball up to him, and he makes those wide runs for people to run into space. I think Hamilton can do that. He's shown that he can do that, but he has to take this opportunity. This is a massive opportunity for him if he ends up playing in that role, and I really hope that Jordan takes this opportunity. And you'll see in my prediction, I'm backing him to score. So he's a young lad, 23, but he seems to be taking his chances and maturing, as I said, and I really hope that continues this match. The danger for TFC, of course, without Altidore, is if we do need a goal We are chasing the game. Last week, we were able to bring Hamilton off the bench, who took his chance and scored. Where does the goal come from if we need goals? So, with Akinola, Terrence Boyd, Jay Chapman, whoever it is that's called into this game, if we need a goal, they have to take their chances. And the mentality that is resonating through the squad right now is that is the mentality: is take your chances, take your opportunities. We're pulling the same direction. Keep fighting, and ultimately, like I talked about on the TFC Weekly, is part of developing into that championship team is continuing down the road in terms of everybody knowing their role, knowing what their job is, knowing being organized, and in training, replacing a player. You're working on your tactics and your job and training. But then in the game, it becomes almost a seamless transition, so that if a player does have to come on, they're not disorganized. They're just really stepping in, round peg into round hole, and they're just continuing on where the next person left off. If it's coming in for an injured player, in this case, in Hamilton's case, filling in the role of an injured Altidore, or if you're Jay Chapman coming on and needing to step into a role and continue the team down the path that they're on, whatever it is, and taking your chances. TFC is doing a tremendous job of that right now, and I mean that's what we saw on the 2017 championship side, is times when Seba and Josie were injured and other players stepped in, and it was a seamless transition, and the things kept ticking over, and there was no real drop off, and that's the trend that TFC is continuing down now, and it has to continue again this game. So my prediction for this game, I'm gonna go 3-1 to TFC. I think that Portland still they're starting to get better, but I still think that they've got those defensive issues that they're working out. I think having more back is going to help us out. I think that obviously Pozuelo, I mean, when you have a player like a match winner like Pozuelo on the pitch and the form he's in, TFC are going to get opportunities this game. I think they're going to take their opportunities. I think if we can just try to hone in and focus on those areas of concern that we talked about, and fill in the gaps. Those are in the same areas that we talked about last week against Minnesota. But if TFC can do a better job this week in containing those areas, that I think that this is another game where we should be taking the 3 points, continuing that trend upwards. Players taking their chances, and just keep things moving forward and keep making up ground on our opponents in the East. And joining me now to talk more about this game is an MLS fan from Ireland, Sean McGrinder. Hey Sean, how's it going?
Not too bad, Tim. How are you getting on?
Oh, not too bad. Getting ready for a full slate of MLS action this weekend, that's for sure.
Yeah, forward to it.
So we're here doing the match preview for the TFC and Portland Timbers game. What are your first thoughts coming into this game? How do you see it playing out?
Well, the way Portland played last week, it's going to be a bit more tighter, a bit more open than I think that Toronto would have planned for. So I think there's going to be a new plan compared to what they did against Minnesota. Minnesota were kind of on and up from their home opener, so I think that kind of surprised them as well. That's the reason why they kind of were so open at the back. So I think they're kind of going to have a bit of a more contingent plan to stop Portland, as they scored plenty of goals against a very defensive Columbus Crew. So
right. Yeah, hopefully Drew Moore back into the 11, hopefully for Toronto. It looks like he's recovered from injury, and it looks like he'll take part. And also Toronto FC bringing back in Oro, the right back. So hopefully that tightens things up. Where do you see Portland hurting Toronto? Where do you see their attack coming from? Obviously, we know Diego Valeri, through the middle.
Barella, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
Well, that's the thing. They can surprise you. They're kind of I kind of felt sorry from this season because all their games for this first half of the season are all away from home. So I kind of
right,
think you kind of feel like for them but like I said, they can really hurt you anywhere. Diego really can hurt you anywhere at any chance. Like you can pop into midfield and pass it out wide, and then you
right,
see him in the box and he can score goals. He's probably just that good. But I think they're relying on him a wee bit too much this season. So they can be dangerous, but I think they can be beaten. This is probably the reason why they're doing quite poorly at this moment.
right. Do you think that Portland? I was talking last night on the when I recorded the other portion of the show that I thought that Portland is a better team than what the record shows. I think that they it seems like they notoriously get off to a slow start every season, but they've got some really quality players, and I don't feel like their record is reflective of how good a side they are. Do you think this could
No,
be
well,
a bit of a banana skin for Toronto?
I can't see it,
No,
unfortunately. No, it's a long distance for them to travel, even to even get to Toronto, and then it's a long distance back. Then they have a game. They have a game then away again, so it's going to be pretty hard for them, I think, this season. I think the only hope for them is to do a DC United. So basically, kind of draw as many games as you possibly can away from home or like a result, and then wait till
right,
you get at home, and then basically try and go full gun mental then.
right. No, a bit of a boost for Portland. Obviously, with their defensive issues that they're having, they're probably going to be happy not to have to face Josie Altidore. Altidore obviously missing out with the hamstring injury. I think personally that Jordan Hamilton comes in and it's just a like for like replacement. Obviously, Altidore you're gonna have a drop in quality with Altidore being out, but I think that Jordan Hamilton, with what he's done early on in the season with the 3 goals in the 2 league games and taking his chances, that he could step in and do a job for Toronto. How do you see that? Do you see him being able to do that, or would you go in a different direction maybe?
It is a tricky one. Like he is pretty still young, and you only have come in through the academy, so you can't really rely too much on the youth system. Like you can, but you can't really be too contingent on people who are just basically in through the youth system. But
Right,
he does look good. It's only time can tell if he can fill in. If he could hold up the ball really well against Portland, I think he'd be doing very well. But I think Portland are going to come to this game and try and grind out the result. So he could be hold the ball up and wait for the likes of Alejandro to come in and kind of help him out. So this is where I could
right.
see him just if she could do that, then it's going to be a great game for him. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, for sure. It's really a game set up for maybe Alejandro, as good as Alejandro Pozuelo has been, to really step up and uh, take it to the next level here. You bring in a guy like Jordan Hamilton, like you said, who's young and is just starting to take his opportunities and take his chances and maturing into that sort of taking that next level of being relied upon. And you really hope that, with all the experience around him, that maybe Pozuelo, he's going to get his chances with Pozuelo. And I
Oh
agree
yeah.
that I think that it's a game set up for Pozuelo to really work his magic in between the lines and to create those chances for sure.
Oh yeah. He just needs to start, bringing in other players when he gets the chance, and then hopefully that should really, get a wee bond going with a few other players and like 1-2s and stuff like that would be pretty good for him.
Hmm. The concern over here for like the people that follow TFC and that talk about TFC are uh, the wide positions. We find that TFC becomes a bit narrow at times because they don't have true wingers to really stretch play. And
Yeah.
obviously, the center back issues have been a problem for us. And one of the issues early on in the season has been with teams being able to get at us wide. We saw that in the Seattle game with Victor Rodriguez and Brad Smith creating chances for
Mm.
Seattle and hurting us. And then last week with Minnesota and just getting a goal off it with Romain Medanier, and Angelo Rodriguez. So TFC, they're looking at the transfer market. They're looking to bring in players.
And there's kind of a debate as to who do you think TFC should be targeting first? A TAM winger, or do you think maybe a center back would be more appropriate because of the issues that we're having?
Well, Toronto doesn't have a problem scoring, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So probably defense, because I did read a wee stat there that Toronto have been letting in. They have let in more than 2 goals in the last 3 games, so it is a bit of alarming statistics. So I'd probably go for a centre back, maybe like an old time player, like maybe from the Championship or the Premier League. Like Gary Cahill would be perfect, but
Right. Yeah, for
but
sure.
I don't. But like they just need Clement, just or isn't it Clement? Can't mind his name now. Just
Simon, Laurent
Steam,
Simon.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, Lauren.
yeah,
He,
yeah.
he seems to be good, but I think he just needs a wee bit more around him, a bit more pace, and I think everything should be probably quite all right.
Right, right. All right, mate. Score prediction time. How do you think this? How do you see this one rolling out?
If Portland play hard to get, could be 2-0, but I think my heart says it's going to be 3 or 4-0.
Oh, that would be a big result. That would be
Oh
perfect
God,
for
yeah.
us. We take it. Well, hopefully TFC can capitalize. They have the 3 games in hand on Montreal and DC. Currently sit third in the East. Looking like we have our issues, but looking like certainly top contender in the East. Uh, Sean, thanks for joining us. Hopefully you'll come back and talk with us again, man. This was really fun, and
No problem.
I really like your stuff. You can follow Sean, guys, on Twitter at MLS Watch and on Instagram, MLS Ireland. Yeah, really good stuff, mate. Keep it up, and thanks for carrying the MLS flag overseas. It's terrific.
Thank you very much, Tim, and good luck with the channel because it is pretty good. Because I've been watching this past week, trying to catch up and stuff.
Right. Yeah. No, thank you very much. Thanks for the support.
No problem, and keep it up, kiddo.
Okay, take care.
Good luck.
That's it for the preview show, guys. I'd like to give a special thanks to Sean McGrinder for joining us all the way from Ireland. You can find him on Twitter at MLS Watch, on Instagram at MLS Ireland. Give him a follow. He's doing really good stuff. We'll be back after the Portland game with the match review, and then of course with TFC Weekly next week. Massive weekend for the Reds here. Good chance to pick up another 3 points at home. Come on, TFC.